Well, good Monday morning, everybody. The order of Monday morning. In keeping with the disciplines of the Holy Order of Monday morning, I'm about 40 minutes late. So I hope you've all been misbehaving. No, the reason I'm late is, and I'll allow you to admire my new haircut. Constance finally said, I got to give you a haircut. You look like Noam Chomsky. Well, I love Noam Chomsky, but he has been looking pretty shaggy lately. Anyway, uh, today I'm going to discuss Liber 61, Vel Causae, the AA. This is from the Holy Books of Thelema. Now, this isn't one of the Class A Holy Books of Thelema, but it does serve sort of as a preface to the Holy Books of Thelema, because it deals with what it calls the preliminary lection, or kind of lecture, including the history lecture. And because it concerns at least Crowley's almost mythologicalized story, chronology of events that led from the wonderful work being done by the Golden Dawn to the wonderful work that Crowley saw as the next step for his AA program. So this would be something that a brand new AA student would hear at the very beginning of his or her assuming that they are kind of a student. Seriously. Here's what it says: the preliminary election, and this is Class D, so we can comment on it, and didn't come down from any further on high than Crowley, when Crowley was he was trying to get something across, and sometimes more truth can be conveyed in a mythological context than in a cold, hard, objective history type context. And this is especially true when it comes to spiritual forces. And spiritual matters. This is why it's very easy within just a few years after the passing of a great religious figure or a prophet or something, myths form around the life and the work of the particular prophet or founder's life. And if it is done with true spiritual discernment, it actually gets to the greater truth behind things. So even though Crowley is going to be discussing real life historical events that you could, if there were movie cameras, you could have, made a tape of it, or if everyone had a phone, they could more or less back up most of these things, except when he starts to talk about things taking place on a spiritual dimension. And for that, we have to at least keep in mind that how Crowley is interpreting those elements of this story, we have to keep in mind it's Crowley, an individual of a certain level of of initiation in consciousness, but nevertheless an individual full of all of the warts and assets and liabilities of a human being. So keeping that in mind, and it's a good thing to keep in mind when we're talking about a Class D document here, just an instructional thing. So here's what he says. The preliminary lection. Now, imagine that you're sort of on the threshold of saying, do I want to seriously embark on this magical program, this AA magical program? And your mentor or mentor-to-be starts by telling you this. In the name of the initiator, Amen. In the beginning was initiation. The flesh profiteth nothing. The mind profiteth nothing. That which is unknown to you and above these, while firmly based on their equilibrium, giveth life. In all systems of religion is to be found a system of initiation, which may be defined as the process by which a man comes to learn that unknown crown. Though none can communicate either the knowledge or the power to achieve this, which we may call the great work, yet it is possible for initiates to guide each other, or guide others, it says. Every man must overcome his own obstacles, expose his own illusions, yet others may assist him to do both, and they may enable him to altogether to avoid many of the false paths leading no whither. Like sometimes an alcoholic does need an intervention. Okay. And it's usually from other recovering alcoholics. So others may assist him. Okay. They can further ensure that he is duly tried and tested, for there are many who think themselves to be masters who have not even begun to tread the way of service that leads thereto. Now the great work is one, and the initiation is one, and the reward is one. However diverse are the symbols wherein the unutterable is clothed. Here then the history of the system, which this lection gives you the opportunity of investigating. Listen, we pray you, with attention, for only once does the great order knock at any one door. Whoso knows any member of that order as such can never know another, until he too has attained to mastery. Here, therefore, we pause that you may thoroughly search yourself and consider if you are yet fitted to take the irrevocable step. For the reading of that which is followed, for the reading of that which follows is recorded. The history lection. Some years ago, a number of cipher manuscripts were discovered and deciphered by certain students. We're getting ready, to digress, we're getting ready to explore from sort of a spiritual dimension the founding of the Golden Dawn, the genesis of the Golden Dawn. So I'll start again. Some years ago, a number of cipher manuscripts were discovered and deciphered by certain students. They attracted much attention, as they purported to derive from the Rosicrucians. You will readily understand that the genuineness of the claim matters no whit. such literature being judged by itself, not by its reputed sources. Okay, if lightning would strike me right now, and that's all I get to say to you this morning about this particular document, I want you to remember that right at the very top, he says, you will readily understand that the genuineness of the claim matters no whit. Such literature, okay, such spiritual literature, if you will, being judged by itself and not by its reputed sources. Okay, the idea was because of a complicated and very unfortunate chain of events, this cipher manuscript was called into question years after the foundation of the order, questioning its true spiritual link. And it was not only debatable, but it's highly likely that it didn't occur in the same mythological context. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Among the manuscripts was one which gave the address of a certain person in Germany, who is known to us as SDA. And my Latin is terrible, sapiens domen apitur astris, or the wise will rule the stars. And that was Fräulein Springel, who later went to work for Mel Brooks. Okay, that's SDA, Fräulein Springel. Those who discovered the ciphers wrote to SDA and, in accordance with instructions, received an order. An order was founded which worked in a semi-secret manner. After some time, SDA died. Further requests for help were met with a prompt refusal from the colleagues of SDA. It was written by one of them that SDA's scheme had always been regarded with disapproval. But such is the absolute rule of the adepts, is never to interfere with the judgment of any person, whomsoever, how much more than one of themselves. And that one most highly revered. They refrained from active opposition. But the adept who wrote this added that the order had already, the new order, meaning that the order had already quite enough knowledge to enable it or its members to formulate a magical link with the adepts. Now, okay, wait a second. I'll wait till afterwards. Shortly after this, one called SRMD. Now, that's MacGregor Mathers, SRMD. Sreagail Modrem. It's Gaelic. My Gaelic is flawless, but it means royal is my race. SRMD. MacGregor Mathers. Shortly after this, one called SRMD announced that he had formulated such a link, and that himself and two others were to govern the order. New and revised rituals were issued, and fresh knowledge poured out in streams. And I have to digress for a second to say that fresh knowledge was pure gold. It was great. I don't care if it came from the phone book. It was great stuff. And it just kept coming and coming in higher grades and rituals designed to attune the initiate into higher levels of illumination, of awakening, of initiation. but I digress. We must pass over the unhappy juggleries which characterize the next period. It has throughout proved impossible to elucidate the complex facts. Digressing again, and that's what my good friend Jim Bukowski and I tried to do in a movie script called Young Aleister Crowley, Revolt of the Magicians, kind of a fanciful thing. So I've been steeped in the history and the mythology of this period for quite a number of years. Okay. We content ourselves, then, with observing that the death of one of his two colleagues and the weakness of the other secured to SRMD the sole authority. And that's Dr. Woodman and Westcott, Wynne Westcott. The rituals were elaborated, though scholarly enough, into verbose and pretentious nonsense. The knowledge proved worthless, even when it was correct, for it is in vain that pearls, be they never so clear and precious, are given to the swine. The ordeals were turned into contempt, it being impossible for anyone to fail therein. Unsuitable candidates were admitted for no better reason than of their worldly prosperity. In short, the order failed to initiate. Now remember, this is from Crowley's point of view. And one might point out that because of his then existing young Aleister Crowley's wild and crazy reputation, he himself may have been admitted for at least partially for reasons of his worldly prosperity. But that's just my projection there. Scandal arose, and with it schism. In 1900, 1P, that's Perdurabo, Crowley, a brother instituted a rigorous test of SRMD on one side of the order, on one side, and the order on the other. So he kind of joined in the revolt. More accurately, he was the catalyst. Crowley was the catalyst of the revolt. And he's saying if Mathers had distinguished himself and risen to the occasion, he wouldn't have failed the test, but in this case he did. In 1900, 1P, a brother, instituted a rigorous test of SRMD on one side and the order on the other. He discovered that SRMD, though a scholar of some ability and a magician of remarkable powers, had never attained complete initiation, and further had fallen from his original place. He, having imprudently attracted to himself forces of evil too great and terrible for him to withstand. The claim of the order that the true adepts were in charge of it was definitely disproved. And at least on a very objective level, it's true. In the order, with two certain exceptions and two doubtful ones, he found no persons prepared for initiation of any sort. He thought, this is Perdurabo is P. That's Crowley's neophyte name, and I will endure to the end. He thereupon, by his subtle wisdom, destroyed both the order and its chief. Being himself no perfect adept, he was driven of the spirit into the wilderness, where he abode for 6 years, studying by the light of reason the sacred books and secret systems of initiation of all countries and ages. Finally, there was given unto him a certain exalted grade, whereby man becomes master of knowledge and intelligence, and no more their slave. He perceived the inadequacy of science, philosophy, and religion, and exposed the self-contradictory nature of the thinking faculty. Returning to England, he laid his achievements humbly at the feet of a certain adept, DDS. Now that's George Cecil Jones, his Golden Dawn buddy. He introduced him into the Golden Dawn, and they were pals, okay? Who welcomed him brotherly and admitted his title to the grade with which he had so hardly won. Whereupon these two adepts conferred together, saying, "May it not be written that the tribulations shall be shortened?" Wherefore they resolved to establish a new order, which should be free from the errors and deceits of the former one. Without authority, they could not do this, exalted as their rank was among adepts. They resolved to prepare all things great and small against that day when such an authority should be received by them, since they knew not where to seek for higher adepts than themselves, but knew that the true way to attract the notice of such was to equilibrate the symbols. The temple must be builded before the god can indwell it. Therefore, by the order of DDS, did P prepare all things by his arcane science and wisdom, choosing only those symbols which were common to all systems, and rigorously rejecting all names and words that might be supposed to imply any religious or metaphysical theory. To do this utterly was found impossible, since all language has a history, and the use, for example, of the word spirit implies the scholastic philosophy, the Hindu and Taoist theories concerning breath. Okay, so it was difficult to avoid implication of some undesirable bias by using words like order or circle or chapter or brotherhood, society, or any other to designate the body of initiates. This is my favorite line coming up. Deliberately, therefore, did he take refuge in vagueness. I don't know, I just love that line. Deliberately, therefore, did he take refuge in vagueness. Not to veil the truth to the neophyte, but to warn him against valuing non-essentials. Should therefore the candidate hear the name of any god, let him not rashly assume that it refers to any known god, save only the god known to himself. Or should the ritual speak in terms, however vague, which seems to imply Egyptian or Taoist or Buddhist or Indian or Persian, Greek, Judaic, Christian, or Muslim philosophy, let him reflect that this is a defect of language, the literary limitation, and not the spiritual prejudice of the man P. Especially let him guard against the finding of definite sectarian symbols in the teaching of his master, and in the reasoning from the known to the unknown, which assuredly will tempt him. We labor earnestly, dear brother, that you may never be led away to perish upon this point, for thereon have many holy and just men been wrecked. By this have all the visible systems lost the essence of wisdom. We have sought to reveal the Arcanum. We have only profaned it. Now, when P had thus with bitter toil prepared all things under the guidance of DDS, even as the hand writes while the unconscious brain, though ignorant of detailed movements, applauds or disapproves the finished work, there was a certain time of repose as the earth lieth fallow. It's sort of the pulse of every magical operation, major or minor. Uh, you do something, you exert energy, and then you sit and wait a while. Just like you pray, but then you listen. Active, passive. Okay. So there's a certain time of repose as the earth life follow. Meanwhile, these adepts busied themselves intently with the great work. In the now remember they're looking for that true link themselves, that adept that would form the triumvirate, or so Jones and Crowley were thinking, we're not in plug yet, as much of the work that we're doing, as much as we kind of understand what's going on. We don't have that above the abyss connection. We don't have an adept above the abyss that can actually stick our new order's finger in the light socket of above the abyss. They're looking for a master of the temple. In the fullness of time, even as a blossoming tree that beareth fruit in its season, all these pains were ended, and these adepts and their companions obtained the reward which they had sought. They were to be admitted to the eternal and invisible order that hath no name among men. They, therefore, who had with smiling faces abandoned their homes, their possessions, their wives, their children, in order to perform the great work, could with steady calm and firm correctness abandon the great work itself. For this is the last and greatest projection of the alchemist. Also, one VVVVV arose, an exalted adept of the rank the master of the temple, or as much as he disclosed to the exempt adepts. And his utterance is enshrined in the sacred writings. The adept that Jones and Crowley were looking for was not necessarily a physical, living, breathing adept. If they found one, that would be great. But the living, breathing vehicle of that adept was something more on the lines of a frequency of consciousness, an above the abyss connection with above the abyss. And each one of us on our return to Godhead will become that adept ourselves. So, VVVVV, the flesh and blood vehicle of VVVVV, was Crowley himself when he achieved and was operating from the consciousness frequency associated with number 3 on the tree of life. He became his own adept. He made his own connection. King Solomon not only invoked God, King Solomon became God. But I digress. These sacred writings that he enshrined this information in were Liber Legis, or the Book of the Law, Liber Cordis Cincte Serpente, and he's giving the Holy Books of Thelema, that's Liber 65, Liber Libriae, Vel Lapis Lazuli, and others whose existence may someday be divulged unto you. Beware lest you interpret them in either the light or the darkness. Don't be throwing duality into your interpretation of these documents. In other words, uh, beware lest you interpret them either in the light or in the darkness, for only in LVX may they be understood. He, he, and I think now we're referring to VVVVV, he conferred upon DDS and OM, that's another one of Crowley's uh, mottos, DDS, OM, and another, the authority of the triad, who in turn have delegated it unto others and yet again, so that the body of initiates may be perfect, even from the crown unto the kingdom and beyond. For perfection abideth not in the pinnacles or in the foundations, but in the ordered harmony of one with all. So, feel free to just interpret that any way you want. I just felt free to digress in my own way. In a sense, what this is encouraging you to sort of view is your progressive steps, the progressive expansion of your consciousness is like an order. It's like a wonderful order. But it's an order of one. It's an O. It's an order of one. It'll always be an order of one. You are that order, but you want to connect yourself at whatever level you're currently working on. You want that connection with the VVV of your particular understanding, and it's almost like, how plugged in to that really are you if you're worried about the meat vehicle of who it is other people say it is? No, you say who it is at any given moment. So don't get too hung up on that. Stick your own damn finger in the light socket, okay? And don't be too quick to condemn, censure those whose understanding of what finger they're plugged into. Don't worry about them. Worry about your own finger. And if you're ready to step into the bathtub. Okay. Well, anyway, I'm mixing my metaphors there. That's it for today. Constance and I are getting ready for Monday Night Magic class tonight, which is, it feels kind of good to get back into the swing of that. We had a wonderful full house last Monday. We got 3 more classes in this particular series of introductory practical Enochian magic. And I'll report tomorrow on how it went. So for those of you who have asked why don't we live stream this or something else, I've mentioned this before. It's class. It's not a it's not a public lecture. It's a class, and we do scrying sessions and things like that. And I don't mind having my face in public, but I can't ask that of students that come to the house. It is you become self-conscious. You're reticent to share intimate details of visions and stuff like that when you think you got 1,000 people watching you. So, no, not going to do that. I've got a Enochian video series, a 4-part Enochian magic video series that's available to you, and that's that. So, in other words, until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.